Hey, I'm back. This is the first video I'm doing on my devlog, as I've mentioned in my previous one. And I am going to essentially just have a time lapse up here with me making the UI for my for the battle scene of the video game I'm making. This video is sort of like the first stop for me. Uh, I'm gonna essentially create a prototype of this turn-based uh, RPG, I would say. It's going to be the classic roguelike, roguelite, or whatever you want to call it, that's been popular within the game space for the most part. So I'm gonna kind of hop on that trend, I guess. I don't even know if it's still trending, but whatever. Uh, so yeah, so this is my idea for this is well, it's going to be a roguelike video game, similar to Darkest Dungeon 2. As I've stated in the previous video, that was one of the main inspirations for this. It's also why it has like this kind of gritty, I wouldn't say gritty, more dark atmosphere to it. But I want to do my own take on it. I don't like the way they did the bosses in that game, and I just felt that I wanted to do something like it, you know? Once again, this video is just me kind of doing the UI for the battle scene. I already have an idea for how I want like the overworld to be. Given it's an RPG, enemies will kind of be out on a map, and when you encounter them, they'll the game will essentially transfer you over to this scene, the battle with the battle UI. Admittedly, I wanted to do more of a prototype, and I kind of spent a little too much time working on this UI stuff. Probably more than what was necessary for a prototype, but I kind of already had the assets for it, and I wanted to make it as close as possible to what I had imagined it looking like in like a final product. And this section for the video game essentially doesn't require any coding for me. The UI is just all done through control nodes within Godot's what would you call it? Interfaces, I suppose. So yeah, I guess I'll kind of go over some of the aspects of what I'm doing here. So currently, this is just basic, like the UI for I don't want to say basic, but like the UI for Godot. So we're using Godot's UI elements. I essentially just want to create a battle menu for the player to enter once they encounter an enemy, and this where all the main combat will take place. And so I kind of just want to go over the structure for what I'm doing here in this UI menu. Or rather, before that, let me talk about how I wanted the UI to look at the end, right? And so I had done this mock-up of what I wanted the UI to look like overall. I felt it was very clear and offered like what information the player needed to actually strategize and take down any enemies that they encountered. This is kind of like what the UI I wanted it to look like. This is one aspect of it. This is just basic character information. Once a player is selected, then it'll kind of go into this other version of it, where we can actually see the skills available to players that they can then use on enemies. In the future, I want to, or rather in the next video, I want to go more in depth with the actual prototyping, and I want to start doing like the movements that would be required for combat. And primarily, I actually wanted to focus on what players had at their disposal to actually fight off any enemies encountered. Going back to the actual UI that I've made, I'm gonna kind of just go over like the final product that I got. Obviously, I'm not the best example if you wanna if you so if you want to create something like this, I'm probably not the best example for it. I make a lot of mistakes. Everyone does. Probably best if you just look at documentation, at least in terms of 2D. Godot has quite a lot of good documentation in terms of 2D games, for 2D games rather. All right, and so What I ended up getting for my UI was what I'm going to show here. Hopefully, I should be showing the right stuff. But essentially, what I have here is just a base control node that I have here just to kind of set up the screen itself. And then I have a color rectangle just for the background. And then we have two other control nodes, and these are going to make up the majority of the information that is available to the player. Uh, the the first one is going to be reserved for the for like more of the battle information. I don't really know how you would call it, but more of this top menu UI, or more for the top of the UI elements. This is going to essentially contain everything. It's going to contain the available actions that the player can take. The way I've set up the game is I wanted them to have separate actions for both attack and defense, which I'm not going to get into right now because that's not really important to the prototype. But I have those set up there. The main focus was essentially on this middle section where I actually have the turn order set up into a scroll node. I forget what they call it in Godot. Let me see. A scroll container. It's set up within a scroll container. And that's just going to allow the portraits of the enemies and the characters themselves to uh, be updated when it's their turn for when it's their turn in combat. And that's kind of like the main important parts for these top UI. Moving on to the bottom UI, I kind of had it have it set up the same way, except I have it so that we basically have the characters' information within a separate container and then their skills in a different one as well. The status bar that you see off to the side is, or rather the status bar, because you don't see it, is isolated to its own menu item, and they're just kind of set up within this separator, which Godot calls a HBox container, and that just neatly separates them into sections. Uh, and so I have them basically just set up into these two different ones, and these other different containers house the different aspects that the player will use in combat. One of them essentially just shows their information, and then the other one when activated shows the skills available to the player that they've chosen for their party, essentially, or rather the character that is selected. This video is just me kind of getting to that result. I had a lot of mistakes, obviously, but overall, I had a fun time just creating this. In the final game, I wanted it to have some movement within this UI. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that right now. But here you can actually see like more of a final target that I wanted for the UI in terms of like movement. Uh, you can see I have it set up so that the turn order moves and then the skill bar actually moves when you're trying to select a certain skill to attack with. And so this is kind of like what I envisioned uh, all the movement is going to be within like the video game. Obviously, I don't have it so that you can see the enemy you're targeting to attack, but in the final version of the game, I'm hoping to get that all finished. And so here you can actually see the end result that I got. Uh, this is what I ended up getting from the Godot engine. This is the character skill information window, and then here it is when they're trying to select a skill. All right, and that should be it for this video. I guess you can maybe see them side by side. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that, but yeah, that's it. Uh, in the next video, I'm going to shift focus onto movement and getting the battles to actually trigger when a character kind of steps into an enemy's detection range. You know, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, if you are, and hopefully I make another video. Thanks.